Today I'd like to talk about encouragement. I have noticed an epidemic of discouragement and lack of purpose, all kinds of problems related to the pandemic and isolation and so forth. Now, of course, this is not a new problem. It's not the first time that anyone's been discouraged, and the Bible has quite a few examples of very important people who suffered discouragement. And so I wanted to talk about one of them today, and then I'll talk about a couple more in the future. This is Elijah. Elijah is a prophet who was powerful, and he won a great victory against rival prophets of another god, and he just did a lot of miracles. You'd think, well, here's a guy who would always be on fire for God, but no, he had his tough times. While Elijah went a day's journey into the wilderness, he came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. That sounds pretty discouraged and pretty isolated. A day's journey into the wilderness. I mean, I'm not sure where on the continent of North America you could go that's a day's journey into the wilderness, where there's nobody around you for a whole day in any direction. That's really isolated. And he did it on purpose because he was just tired. He just didn't want to deal with any more. And of course, he was under a lot of stress, and that naturally can lead to discouragement. It can lead to other things too, but he was dealing with this terrible sense of discouragement, and he just wanted it all over. And so that was his prayer, that he might die. Now, of course, God does not grant that prayer, and instead responds to Elijah. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now that sounds pretty exciting. It also sounds like something that would definitely get me out of the doldrums, is to be able to actually, in some sense, meet with the Lord. And it's on a mountaintop. That's the whole mountaintop experience cliche in Christianity, is a lot of the important things of Scripture where God meets man happen on mountaintops. We talk about mountaintop experiences as being a time where we really felt close to God. And those mountaintop experiences are supposed to carry us through the valleys, the times when we're discouraged, the times when it doesn't seem like God's paying very much attention at all. And so this is Elijah's chance to make a connection to God and to lift him out of that discouragement, which it did. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after an earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. Well, that's interesting. We would like to think about an appearance of God as being spectacular in these ways, wind and fire and, all that kind of powerful stuff. Well, no, that's not how God showed himself to Elijah. In fact, he just allows those things to happen first, so Elijah will know, no, that's not it. That's not the way that God generally relates to people. Mostly, God relates to people in a way that will connect for a long time, and it sounds a lot more like this. The Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. So he knew, in the gentle whisper, there was God. And that was what lifted from him his discouragement. That was what made him know that God was with him, that God still had a plan for his life, and that he was willing to give it a shot, get back out there and try again and do more for what God was going to do. Now, that is something that's important. When we receive a message from God that lifts us out of his discouragement, usually it comes with responsibility. It doesn't usually come in a vacuum where we're just supposed to feel happy about it for the rest of the day. No, it usually comes with a mission. And that is what Elijah received immediately following this. Now that God had strengthened his prophet once more, he gave him several missions, and they were important missions that changed the future of Israel. Now, that's not necessarily what God's going to do for us, but he will give us some kind of mission, some kind of purpose, and that purpose will help us to lift that discouragement. It's not just knowing that God is there, but it's also knowing that God is working through us. So if we are feeling discouraged today, let us reach out to God and then listen for that gentle whisper.